Hi everyone. A residence, a suburban estate called Gorky. Not Gorky, it's not named after Maxim Gorky as one may think, but it's named after mountains. It's just a bit of a hilly area. So Gara, it's not really a mountain, it's like a hills. So that's the name of the residence, Gorky. Because it's a name, we don't really translate that, so it is as it is. And that's what it looks like. For those of you who have seen my tours about Fyodor Schechtel's architecture, you may be surprised because we know him as the architect who constructed beautiful palaces, castles, Art Nouveau masterpieces. But that's not the case. That's a different story, and I will explain. Dates matter, names matter, and this tour is definitely related to the previous one. Well, one of the previous ones that I have already given. So this residence, Gorky, belonged to Zinaida Morozova. You may remember her as the wife of a prominent merchant from Moscow, Sava Morozov. That's him, Savely Sava Morozov. He was one of the richest men in the country. He owned a lot of textile manufacturers, and he was the textile king of Moscow and the entire Russian Empire. And that's one of the houses they owned. And that's the house built by my favorite architect, Fyodor Schechtel, which is the combination of eclecticism. Well, it's eclectic, it's neo-Gothic, it's Art Nouveau-ish inside. The recording is available for my sponsors. And it's just, if it's one or two tours you would like to see, obviously just let me know and I will share with you the link gladly. But why on earth, after such a gorgeous house, they switched to something a lot more, I would say, boring maybe? Even when I found out about this residence many years ago, I was expecting to see some absolutely gorgeous medieval castle or something. Well, that's not the case. The thing is that Zinaida Morozova lost her husband in 1905 in very suspicious circumstances, and he was killed or killed himself. So she inherited a lot of money since he was one of the richest people in the country, and she remarried 2 years later. In 1907, she married Anatoly Rainbot, who was the mayor of Moscow. And this marriage was, I would say, for mutual profit. And it looks like they were in love, but what we know is that thanks to marrying Rainbot, Zinaida Morozova got the aristocratic title, because merchants in Moscow didn't have aristocratic titles. So they actually came from the old believers community, and it was not common for aristocrats to be non-old believers. So, and he got the money that she had inherited from her husband. And they weren't actually planning to move to Gorky. They wanted to buy it as a way of investment. So it's always been like that. The best way to invest is into property. And Zinaida Morozova just decided to buy a big plot of land. And she, after she purchased the plot of land well, actually it's an old estate from the early 19th century, she asked Fyodor Schechtel, so that architect, to work on it. And again, so this could have been something like that, right? So that's the Morozov's house in Moscow. We had a tour about it. It's a gorgeous place. Or it could be something like that, right? Or it could be something like that. That's the first house we saw, with an amazing wave-like staircase. Or it could be something like that. That's actually the house that Fyodor Schechtel built for himself and for his family. So it could be anything, but for some reason he's opted for something very classic. And there were two reasons for it. Fyodor Schechtel was the architect who could really sense, who could feel the times, the hype, the fashion, the trend. And he could actually see the trend before it became a trend. He had the eye for trend. He could spot the trend easily, quickly, and he was a very good, he was well versed in architecture history, so he could kind of feel the wind of change. And obviously, after ornate styles like Art Nouveau and eclectic styles, there would be always a need for something more reserved and more, I would say, and less expressive. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that, as I said, there had already been an estate. That's, by the way, all the people that worked on the construction, and it took them less than 2 years to build everything. And it's a big territory as well. That's important to remember. It's not the estate within the city. It's in the suburbs of Moscow. Back then it was, but it's still quite close. It was about 1 hour by car. And the Morozovs had a car. Obviously, that's how rich they were. We have some old photographs. And the idea is that there had already been a house built, and it was built in the it was just built in classicism style. And Schechtel, who was always very, I would say, careful about the preservation, about the, he treated architecture with tenderness, and he didn't want to completely destroy the house. And Zinaida Morozova was quite okay with that. And they decided just to add more light and more space to the place, and it eventually became what we're going to see today. The other story, which is also mentioned in the title, is that this place happened to have become a home, and the last home to Vladimir Lenin, because, after the revolution, the private property was no longer there. It didn't exist. It ceased to be. And Lenin just liked this estate, and he decided to settle there. We will talk about the details, so how it happened and how he behaved and how he treated the house. But Lenin had a good taste. So it was close to Moscow. It was, back then it was already even less than 1 hour's walk. It was beautiful. It had good nature. It had a lot of space for Lenin and for his entourage, so to speak, because obviously wherever Lenin went, he worked like crazy, and everyone around him had to work like crazy. So once again, that's Zinaida Morozova, that's Sava Morozov, who we're not going into details because that's not really the point of the tour, but so we know that he left her a great deal of money. That's what the house looked like when she bought it in 1907. And the main part of the body, like the main building, is still there. So Schechtel did not tear it down. These are the photos taken somewhat before 1907, clearly. And that's Morozova and Rainbow together. I'm not sure where they are, so there are not so many photographs of them together. And it was supposed to be just a summer getaway. That's the photo even before 1905, as it says here. So that's what I have been able to find. Well, definitely that's before Morozova and Rain bought. It was meant to be just a summer getaway. But shortly after they got married, he was accused of embezzlement of the budget money. And in order to escape the rumors and the scandal, she sold the house in Moscow, that gorgeous castle-like building, and they moved for good to Gorky after it was rebuilt. So you can see that a lot of work was done. So there was built this gigantic portico. They were added this room and this room, which added a lot more lights. And I can understand why this place became a home to Zinaida Rainbot, and she loved it and she felt very comfortable there. She had a lot of space to bring the furniture from the house in Moscow, but that castle that I showed you, and she just started things. Well, it was a fresh start for her. And it was comfortable. She wasn't bothered by anyone. She just enjoyed the quiet living, even amidst the trial that actually lasted for 3 years. So We have some old photographs, but the amazing thing is there is not really much need for, I mean, it's always nice to have old photographs. We know that having old photographs helps the restoration. It helps to understand what the place looked like before the revolution. But the thing is that this time there was no need for photographs because the place looks exactly as it was. Everything that we will see inside is original and memorial, because after the revolution, Zinaida Morozova managed to get the title the monument title, monument status to the house, and nothing could be changed there. Nothing could be taken from the house. It gave the house protection from lootings, from changes, from rebuilding and whatnot. And Lenin was looking for a summer getaway, and that's what he opted for. So he had a good taste, a very good taste. And normally it would be like that. Big territory, there would be a main house, there would be a lot of side buildings with different services, with servants living and everything. So this house had it all. Also, it's a big park, so there will be also a lot of park constructions, such as this nice pavilion, just like a colonnade. It's just a park colonnade, which were quite widespread. There is a river there, and so Zinaida Morozova left memoirs in the end of her life. By the way, she never left the country. She died in 1947 in Moscow. So she left a lot of memories, a lot of memoirs of her life in Gorky, of her work and friendship with Fyodor Schechtel, and what it was like to have left Gorky. And she had no idea she would never be back, because back then when the revolution happened, most would think that it wouldn't last for long, yet the Bolsheviks lasted for 80 years. So that's I would say that's not too encouraging. Let's put it like that. So that's why I hope you're not disappointed. So yeah, we're not going to see Art Nouveau, we're not going to see crazy medieval times inspired fireplaces or whatnot. We're going to see a very, I would say, posh but still reserved and demure interior of a woman who owned half of the country, honestly. Even though she was a bit defeated because of the trial, because of her story with her husband, and the reason number one she actually left the house in Moscow is not even just because she wanted to escape from the rumors, but because it was difficult to live there alone. She also claimed she saw a ghost of her husband. She would see the ghost of her husband every night. So here she definitely lived in peace and quiet amidst all this chaos that all of a sudden was created around her family. And as you enter, you are going to see a lot of telephones. And actually, Schechtel liked to employ all sorts of techie stuff, and he was very tech savvy, and he tried to follow with the latest advancements that were available at that time. So the house had, as I was just about to say, fiber internet. Obviously not. So it had telephone, it had electricity, it had the central heating, and obviously the sewage system. It had everything. So it was a neoclassicism, let's put it like that, very neoclassicism. And obviously that's another reason why Lenin opted for this estate to be his home, because he always had to be connected to the Kremlin, where he still had his office. But we're talking already about the later years of life of Vladimir Lenin. So he moved into Gorky in 1920, and he had his first stroke in 1922, and then the second stroke, and after the second stroke, he could no longer move easily, get around easily. So eventually he moved into Gorky for good after his third stroke, and so he died here in 1924. Zinaida Morozova had a very good taste and a very good eye for art, and she purchased a lot of sculptures from Europe, and she had a lot of them in her house in Moscow in Spiridonovka Street, the one that looked like a castle built by Schechtel, and she brought the sculptures here. Schechtel created this section of the building did not exist when Morozova bought it. Schechtel created here a winter orchard. He knew how much Zinaida Morozova liked well, flowers and just, you know, flora. So he created the winter orchard, and because he used central heating, and he had very good ventilation, he built a very good ventilation. Well, that was not a problem. I'm also adding some photographs from the internet because the footage is not enough. And Schechtel kind of created this sort of zoning. It was a one big space. He wanted to, so Zinaida told him, and she remembered that in her memoirs, she said that because of that situation around her family and the scandal around Rainbot's embezzlement, she felt there was not enough air. She felt like she couldn't really breathe. And Schechtel created the big space with no separations, with no walls, so that Zinaida could actually breathe freely. And this room is gigantic, indeed. And it wasn't so difficult to build it, because Schechtel, and it's already early 20th century, Schechtel used the most advanced metal construction, so there was no need for support for columns or whatnot. There was no need for it, and hence the very big room. And obviously Schechtel was the architect who paid attention to the tiniest details, such as doorknobs, or I'm not even sure what you call it. It's not a cornice, it's the curtain holders. I don't know what you call them, curtain bars, but I mean, you get the point, right? Even that was designed by Schechtel. He had also an assistant. He also partnered with several, he would always partner with some artists if there was a need to. He didn't need to partner with any artists for this particular house, but curtain rail. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you so much. Yeah, I should have known that. Yeah, curtain rail. But he didn't really need to partner with any artist on this particular project, because there was enough of very first top-class artworks in the collection of Zinaida Morozova. But after the revolution, all these works were taken to the museums for better preservation, to ensure their safety, security, and whatnot. And but during times of Vladimir Lenin, this room was, well, I think you're not surprised if you wouldn't be surprised if I told you that this was the favorite room of Lenin. Everyone could gather here, and you see what they have here? Lenin liked to watch movies in this room. And his sister moved in with him, and his brother moved in with him, and his wife, Nadezhda Krupska, moved in with him, and also obviously the guards, because there had been some assassinations, right? There had been attempts to kill Lenin, so he had guards, he had quite an entourage. Everyone gathered in this room, the family, I mean, and his sister was operating this projector to watch the movies. Yeah, so Lenin was a human being. He worked like 98% of the time. He read books and wrote books, but apart from that, he also had some, I would say, more or less human kinds of entertainment. Yeah, sometimes it's difficult to see that, but yeah, he was a human being. We are now about to see the dining room, and in the dining room there still have been preserved the original sink. This is the English faience, and it's the original sink. and the original tap. The amazing thing, because the house got this status of a heritage object, of a heritage monument, it wasn't touched at all. And when Lenin moved in, he asked not to change a thing in the house because it belonged to people. Actually, it would be exactly the dining room that would be touched, that would be changed, but it was done for a reason. It's not like I'm fencing out Lenin or anything. I mean, have a look at the tap. Right? The dining room was removed from the original room. So when Lenin moved in, his guards moved into this room, and the dining room was moved to another room further in the building. I'm not sure why exactly it was done in this room, but all the furniture, all the dishes, everything, all the kitchenware, everything was preserved. And when the time came to open up again the museum of the Morozov family, it was decided to return everything to its original places. And because there were photographs, and because there was very meticulously registered, like everything was put in the catalogs, all the items, that was not a problem to restore it. So this is okay. It's one room that is a little bit, not memorial in a way. The Karelian birch tree, which we already know very well. We can easily recognize that. So that's a pretty expensive piece of furniture. And it was purchased by Zinaida Morozova. So Lenin did not buy any furniture for this house. He did not bring anything, but he didn't break anything either. So, well, almost, yeah. Zinaida brought a lot of items from the Moscow house, but she also, she rolled in it, so she ordered also a lot of new items. But this house was a lot smaller than the house she had in Moscow, so she struggled what to keep. And a lot of it was actually, a lot of the items that did not fit into the house would be returned to the house in Moscow, in Spiridonovka Street, and would be sold to the new owner, the Rybushinsky family. By the way, that's hold on a second, give me a minute. Like, that's the library, and that's the library from times of Zinaida Morozova. As I said, Lenin did not change a thing. Lenin didn't even touch the books. He had his own library, but he also read a lot of books that were collected by Zinaida Morozova. He liked her choice of books. Lenin could work 28 hours per day, and his brain could process huge masses of information, and he could easily render it into a very short text, and then relate it to a completely different theory, completely different story, and then he could put it into writing. And that's how many of his books would be created, just like that. So he was extremely efficient, and I don't know where his endurance came from, but it came with a price. So all the strokes that he had, that was exactly the result of the pressure and of the I would say the responsibilities, of course. Okay, let's move on. By the way, the floors are also original, and up until nowadays, all the books here, they belong to Zinaida Morozova. Many of them have ex libris. Many of these books have her fingerprints, have some notes done by her. So that's amazing. And then, as I said, he had an entourage. Lenin had an entourage, and I would like to skip, I'd rather not doing the Q&A session in the middle. Let's just have a one in the end, because I want to make sure I show you everything and fit everything into one tour. So let's not have a Q&A now. He came with an entourage. So he came with the sister came with the family. And so this room would be given to the sister. Well, sister, everyone in the family worked and helped Lenin in everything. So it was like I would say it was the machine, the small family machine. Nadezhda Krupskaya, Lenin's wife. These photographs were taken already after his third stroke. That's 1923. He would die the next year. And Krupskaya, but there were a lot of questions, like what kind of relationships they actually had. But what is undoubtable is that she would stay with him till the very end. And when he had his third stroke and couldn't walk really, and could barely talk, and just do things, she would be next to him 24/7. She would be switching rooms, she would be switching bedrooms and sleeping in the room next to the room where Lenin would choose for bedroom. That was like that. She was always there any time of day and night. So she definitely proved to have been very loyal wife, and more like even I would say a colleague, maybe, I'm not sure. So that's the room that used to be one of the boudoirs for Zinaida Morozova. And this room was one of the bedrooms for Vladimir Lenin. There were several rooms where he slept, but he liked this room very much. And exactly in this room, we can see this rocking chair that he liked very much, and he couldn't actually do without it, starting from 1923. And we can see this rocking chair and him in it. Because starting from 1923, he found it difficult to walk. He found it difficult to stand. So that's why that was the rocking chair. And also in this room was stored his, so he would spend the time either in the rocking chair, and he worked in the rocking chair, or when he would go for a ride, for a walk, there would be a wheelchair that was delivered to him from Europe, and he would be using the wheelchair to get around the park. And the two chairs would be standing in this room. So that was his bedroom, one of the boudoirs of former boudoirs of Zinaida Morozova. Then this used to be the actually the bedroom of Zinaida Morozova, but so this room for sometimes it was the bedroom for Krupskaya, for Nadezhda Krupskaya, Lenin's wife. Sometimes Lenin would be also resting here. Again, he could change rooms, and she would just adjust that, just like that. And when he passed away in 1924, his body before the autopsy would be taken to this room, and the death mask would be made. So we will see the cast shortly. He worked quite a lot in this room, so when I was there, like 12 years ago, maybe 11, around that time. So when I was there myself, as you know, I used to live in Moscow for more than 5 years. It was long ago, but nevertheless. So I was told by a local guide that during the times of let's put it like that, in case of a fire, the workers of the museums, the guards or whoever was in the museum at that point, they had to take 4 very important exhibits and then run. So the walking stick, the writing utensils, the books that belonged to Lenin, and his case. So those were the 4 most important exhibits. This is the drawing room, the blue drawing room. It was also taken by one of the family members. But the idea is that nothing was supposed to be moved. So people lived here, but they didn't really change the furniture. They didn't really alter anything. And Lenin kept a close eye on it for as long as he could, obviously. Right now, we see very few artworks on the walls, but at times of Zinaida Morozova, their artworks were all over the walls. That's the bathroom. Obviously, like everywhere in European residences, there would be a women's half and the men's half of the palace. So both halves of the palace had bathrooms, and they had big bathtubs. So this, as I said, there was sewage system, there was pipe, everything. And because Lenin spent most of the time on the former women's half, and Krupskaya was always with him, he so when he died, and after the death mask was made, his body was laid into this bathtub, and that's where the autopsy was carried out. I know it sounds bizarre, like why didn't they wait for his body to be taken to the morgue or anything? Well, it was decided by the doctors that the autopsy would be done in this room, and that's where the autopsy was done, in the bathtub. That's known for a fact. I was talking about the artworks. So the most precious artworks would be taken to museums, as I said, and those were the first class paintings, I would say, from the best artists, the level of the Pushkin Museum or Tretьяков Gallery or Russian Museum. That's what I'm talking about. And that there was this one small scenery, like landscape, that kind of was signed, but the signature wasn't so easy to make out. For a long time, it was kind of doubted whether it was Isaac Levitan or not. Isaac Levitan is one of the artists that Fyodor Schechtel was friendly with, and Fyodor Schechtel was a good friend of Isaac Levitan. Isaac Levitan is one of my favorite artists, and even though he was Jewish, he is considered, and probably will always be considered, one of the greatest Russian artists of the 20th century, early 20th century, maybe. Let's put it like that. And by looking at this painting, I know now, but it looks very much like Levitan. And only like several years later, several years ago, the good tests were run, and indeed it was confirmed that this is Isaac Levitan. So at least one quite an important artwork remained in the house. And I'm not sure how many other artworks by Levitan were in the collection of Zinaida Morozova, but she had really several. That's true. So I don't know whether those artworks left. So that's Isaac Levitan. I spoke a lot about him on my Russian museum tours, and also on the Jewish heritage tours of the Russian Empire. So yeah, we spoke a lot about him. And after the autopsy was performed, the train came from Moscow. So Gorky, the other advantage, the other reason why Gorky was opted as a residence, because there was a railroad not really far, not too close, but not very far from from the residence, and then the body that was just covered with the white cloth would be taken directly to the train. And this is when well, let me show you, hold on a second. Yeah, this is when the Merkuryev, who was the early Soviet period sculptor, who was friends with Vladimir Lenin, so he created this powerful monument. But the cloth was white, but here the cloth is red. Well, I guess because we're talking here about death and the autopsy, I'm not sure. This is the video I filmed when I was there, like, again, 11, 12 years ago, I don't know. And that's absolutely amazing. Back in the days, it didn't feel like you are in the Museum of Lenin in terms of, I mean, the place where Lenin is cherished. No, it's not like that. It's just a place that, well, remembered Lenin, because Lenin was a historic figure, a very important historic figure. But so it didn't feel like any propaganda or anything. And but it's important to understand that in 1987, it was the time, well, for those of you who have been watching Misha's tours on the Soviet history and culture, you know, those were not really the best times for the country. It was the period of heavy stagnation. The political powers, the politicians were in crisis. Everything was pretty badly looking. And well, the government was just really trying, they really just try to hold the power in their hands, just gripping for it. And it was decided to open a big museum of Vladimir Lenin. And the museum opened. I will tell you what was done for that, but when the perestroika happened, obviously all monuments to Vladimir Lenin would be taken down. But they would not be destroyed. They would be brought to this museum. I'm not talking about every Lenin statue in every Russian city. Well, you would probably need a small city filled up, and the small city will be filled up with all these sculptures. But from Moscow, a lot of monuments were saved and brought here. So this is just a very Lenin alley. I lost count to actually how many Lenins I saw. And also there were a lot of this, remember I told you that in Leningrad and in Moscow, it was a common thing that every house that Lenin had visited, or maybe even just touched, or I don't know, a house where Lenin would go to the toilet, every house mattered, and every house got some, you know, memorial plaques explaining how this house was relevant to Lenin. So there was a lot of this stone plaques here. They were saved from destruction of perestroika times. I don't know, Oleg never told me whether there was any kind of similar feeling when he filmed it. These are still my short videos, but the museum is still there. And let's see what else they have on the territory. Obviously, when you buy an estate, again, it's not just like one house that you have a big plot of land, and there would be a lot of different constructions, pavilions, storage rooms, apartments for servants, garage. Well, this is the garage. That's the water tower, by the way. That's the big water tank and the water pump. So that's because they had their own sewage system, and the water pipe system. Also, let's move on here. There was quite a significant number of staff that served Zinaida Morozova and Rainbot, and they had to live somewhere. So obviously they would be living on the premises. And so in 1987, when there was a big overhaul. Okay, let's put it like this. In 1987, they tried to cling to power. They tried to save whatever could have been saved. Okay, that's one thing. And then in 1991, after the perestroika, there was a great overhaul of Kremlin that took place. And it was decided, because up until then, up until 1991, in Kremlin, there was a museum of Vladimir Lenin. Like the office and apartment of Vladimir Lenin in Kremlin were museums. And it was decided to get rid of it. But not like get rid of it, but just move it from Kremlin and place it somewhere, well, elsewhere as a memory, you know, some museum. Sorry, I wasn't sure whether I want to sneeze or to yawn, so it was kind of two and kind of nothing. Sorry for that. Yes, and it was decided to just basically take all the furniture, all the books, everything that was stored in Kremlin museums, in Kremlin rooms, and bring it to Gorky. And what you're looking at is Aston Martin. Lenin had good taste for cars too. And I'm sure this is Aston Martin you've never seen in your life, because this is the kind of a slightly tanked version. Remember I told you that Lenin would come here quite often before he had his stroke, so he would just like to live in the countryside and then he would be going back and forth. But the thing is that the train station is close, but not really that close. And roads, especially during mid-season and fall and winter, tend to get too muddy or too snowed under. And sometimes Lenin wasted a lot of time to get to Moscow. And the worst thing for Lenin would be wasting time. So he asked to do something about it. And this is when the engineers in Moscow decided to turn it into a Land Rover, kind of Russian style, Soviet style. So they put the skis here and this ribbon, just like tanks have. So this car indeed belonged to Lenin. So Lenin had a driver, and Lenin, like this, would be going to Moscow, I mean to the train station, on a, I would say, almost daily basis. But we are back to the garden just for a while, because we need to see just a little bit more, one more building. So I'm quite happy that I actually don't need to do part two, because we've been able to see everything. More or less. So there was another building that was meant to be just kind of a guest house, because Zinaida Morozova liked to throw parties, and having moved to the suburbs of Moscow, it didn't mean that she would no longer be hosting parties. No, but her parties just tended to get even crazier, even more pompous, and obviously guests had to stay for the night, because it would be impossible for them to travel during the nighttime. Киса, я тебе не мешаю. I'm still sitting on the edge of the chair. I can barely feel, you know, my body, but she's okay. She's fine. She has enough space. That's okay. So, and when Lenin just moved in, so there was a guest house. So because the guests would have to be staying for the night, or they could stay even for 2 nights, depending on how long the parties would go. Well, so when Lenin moved in the 1920s, there was an issue with the heating system in the big house. It took them a while to sort it, because for like about a year and a half, the house was just locked and was standing as it was. So something happened, and it took them a while to get the heating going. And it was decided to move move into the guest house, because it was smaller, it was easier to heat, and it worked. The heating worked there. And that's the room where Lenin slept. In the next room, at that point, Lenin could walk so that was not a problem for him. In the room next to it, there would be the room for Nadezhda Krupskaya. Yeah, there you go. And there were rooms for all the family members, basically, for his sister and her family, and several more people. And as I said, the guards would also be housed somewhere on the ground floor of the guest house, I believe. I'm not sure. I don't know for sure, but definitely guards would be somewhere. And when everything got fixed, within several months, they moved into the big house. Yes, so that's basically this guest. This is the continuation of the house. That was so I wish I showed you the guest house, and there was from another side there was built another extension, and that's exactly where all the contents, all the furniture was moved from Moscow to Gorky. So what you're looking at is the office, the study of Vladimir Lenin in Kremlin. His furniture, his chair, his rocking chair, the armchairs, everything, his table, his lamp, because everything stayed as it was. What I also forgot to mention that when Lenin passed away, Krupskaya, his wife, stopped all the clocks in the house, and ever since then, the clocks in Gorky residence do not work. They just don't, because the time stopped, because Lenin died in 1924. So that first photo was when everything was just brought in, and then they would start placing it and piecing it together. So eventually that's what the table of Lenin looked like. And I was quite impressed, because they even managed to, well, obviously the dimensions were a little bit different. They couldn't really match it perfectly with the dimensions of the room they had in Kremlin, but nevertheless, those are the items that belong to Lenin. Even this belonged to Lenin. This looks like Fabergé to me, to be honest, but that wasn't his study. It could have been a present. It could have been something. I'm not sure. So, but that's also it also can be found in this museum. So this is it. We are not even overrunning, which is fantastic. Let's have the Q&A. So I owe you a proper Q&A. Let me know if you have any questions, and hi everyone else who joined us a little bit later. So I remind you that we have just been to Moscow. It's not St. Petersburg, and it was one of my favorite places to go to. This place is incredibly beautiful in the fall season. I liked it there a lot, not because of Lenin, but it's also, again, as I said, I don't know. I didn't ask Oleg if he felt any sort of, propaganda and kind of revival of the admiration for Lenin. It didn't feel like that to me when I was there. Thank you, Dorley. Definitely didn't feel like that to me. And it's just, I guess it was the good move for them back then in 1991, because, and it's history. But knowing the reaction and how people hated the Soviet period, and how quickly a lot of monuments, a lot of Soviet period monuments were neglected, and how something was destroyed, so they kind of preserved the this epoch for us, which is not bad at all. And because of Lenin, the house built by Zinaida. Built for Zinaida Morozova, built by Schechtel, is absolutely intact, and it always will be, for sure, because, well, Lenin is still a very big part of our history, and well, nothing's going to change that, fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know. Was there a lamp Fabergé or the hippo? The hippo looked like Fabergé, but not necessarily. I couldn't tell, and I don't remember from my visit. So I'm not sure. It's probably not, but we know that Fabergé was the one who actually set that trend for teeny tiny, useless items, for desk decoration. So it could be Fabergé, but not necessarily. Again, I can't really tell here. Okay, so I'm going to see you in 4 minutes from now in Jerusalem for the Ramparts walk tour. There's one more thing that I forgot to mention, and I will say this again. I have decided to remove direct links for my Zoom from Eventbrite, because these links are in open access, and anyone who wants to, fool around can easily access the tour and just get on our nerves. So that's why I removed the direct links from here, from Eventbrite, where most of you go to if you need to book my tour. But it's still there on the calendars, on the Facebook on Google Calendars for Together Virtually group or Going Places group. The links are there, and I will probably yeah, of course. So those sorts of trolls, I mean, all sorts of people who want to fool around, and they can, well, they just want to sabotage whatever it is. It was a bot, I think. So we don't need that. So that's why I removed the link. I can remove people from the talk, but I can't seem to actually block them for good, at least as of now. I just need maybe to do some more digging into this. So that's why I also have decided that I will try to include the direct links to my newsletter, and I assume that most of you are subscribed to the newsletter, and I will just try to figure out how to do it in a convenient way so you wouldn't have to be looking for those links. I will see how to go about it. That one has been bothering World Virtual Tours for a while. Oh, so that's maybe how he switched to my tours. I don't know. I don't even want to think about it. It's just wasting time trying to think how he got in. We just need to get him out, and we don't want more of these trolls to join us. So that's the thing. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. Thank you for your interest in whatever I show you. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you so much for your support. Your support means a lot to me. You can either send a PayPal donation, you could buy me coffees, and I will see you in 2, maybe 3 minutes from now in Jerusalem for the last tour of today. Bye-bye. Yeah, see you in the Holy City, indeed. Well, we all have trolls. It's inevitable, and that's okay. I mean, that's not okay, but kind of comes with the package. But if there are ways to kind of minimize these risks, it was the same one. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. And this could be also someone that has been on the tours, and I don't know. So again, I'm not sure if even the putting it in newsletter could be a good idea. Who knows? We'll see. Well, we had nonsense. We had some nonsense on Hago. Well, from time to time, everyone gets some issues. That's okay. Okay, it's time to wrap this up. I'll see you soon in Jerusalem. Thank you. Bye-bye.